Good morning and welcome to the TM1 Breakfast Show with Jon. Well, I'm Jon, and with me is Nimeesh.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
2 thumbs up.
Yes. What can be better than a TM1 Breakfast Show? Okay, don't answer that. Right, so today's topic, it's about TM1 Reporting Pro or PA Reporting Pro. Now, the reason of why we are doing this is because TM1 is already the best at what it's doing. But sometimes when people think about BI and reporting outside your planning system, it gets a bit hazy. And what we have experienced sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, Nimeesh, is that when people have TM1 already, they pick a BI tool or reporting tool without looking at the next best thing besides TM1, of course. They look at other tools instead of looking at CA, and that stands for
Cognos Analytics.
Thank you. Oh, amazing. And I guess for the people who haven't seen Cognos Analytics or heard what it is, that's what this episode is for. And also, we'll bring you a little bit of background about what CA is in the past. So you can, of course, hopefully appreciate what CA is all about. And then, besides that, CA is a very modern tool that's constantly being updated. So what we would like to do as well is take this opportunity to show you some of the new things in CA. And hopefully at the end of all of this, you'll realize how amazing it is. And you'll realize, hey, hold on a sec. Between TM1 and CA, you probably have everything. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that might be a thought. Or, of course, you might go, hey, between TM1, CA, and Applico UX, you've got everything. It could be that. Well, who knows? Yeah. So we'll leave that for you to judge. Now, before we continue, a quick comment. Remember to comment if you have any suggestions or questions back to us. Comment, like, and subscribe so we can bring more content from here to you. All right. So without further ado, I would like to formally introduce Nimeesh. Nimeesh is our head of CubeWise Care Australia. Yeah. Thanks for giving me that grin. And also, what people may not know is he's also our internal CA expert who's been doing this. Well, working around CA for more than a decade.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting and fun journey along the way. So happy to be here and talk about CA with you all.
Yes. I thought, well, who would be a better guest than Nimeesh to talk about CA? Because over the years, I've worked with Nimeesh, but here in Sydney, even the last few months, we've been working together about on some customers who have got Cognos Analytics, CA. And in some of those cases, the customers is not fully aware what the tool is. That's the first one. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine who have CA, but have no idea what CA is. Right. So that happens as well. So hopefully we'll hope to address some of those things. And then for the people who have CA, sometimes they don't fully appreciate the power of CA because maybe, just maybe, someone have bought CA or have entitlement to CA and then they moved on and then their predecessor don't know what this is all about or how to use it. Or maybe they're so busy, they're focusing on survival mode and patching things and don't get to explore the power and value of CA. And then there are people who've been using it but can't really understand it in the sense that, well, I've got Cognos Analytics, but I've also heard a lot of names out there that seems bright and shiny and it's got wonderful sound effects when you think about those names. Why don't we buy that instead? Yeah. Well, hold on a sec, guys. Let's get the most value out of your system, and that's what this topic's all about. So, first, before we dive into the history of CA, sorry, Nimeesh, I'm taking all the talk time here.
No, absolutely. This is music to my ears. Longer intro time.
Yeah. It would be the context around TM1 and CA. So I think the first thing to debunk is, look, they both have A, yeah? When people talk about PA, which is Planning Analytics, which is another name for TM1. PA, CA, are they the same thing? PAW, CA, PA, are they all the same thing? Well, hold on a sec. They are both based on the best engine in the world, which is TM1 for planning, reporting, forecasting, and all of that. But CA specializes in one area, TM1 specializes in another, and then PAW is another tool that's built on PA that specializes in something else.
Yep.
So without going into detail of all of that, first understand they're separate tools built for a different purpose, although there's some overlap, and there's definitely a benefit in using those tools together because they are built in one family. So they have got a lot of capabilities out of the box that other tools won't have. And translating the business terms, that means if you're going to work these things together, you can get the same outcome to meet your business objectives with less cost, less risk, less time, less expertise, less HR requirements. So all of that, and of course more. Yeah. So with that out of the way, let's talk about CA. So Nimeesh, for people who have never heard of CA before, how would you describe CA to them?
Well, Cognos Analytics is what CA stands for. It is a dashboarding, reporting tool out of the universe of IBM products. It allows you to integrate against a multitude of data sources. Obviously, TM1, planning analytics is a big part of it. On top of that, you also do get the capability to connect to your other data sources, so other relational type of data sources that you may have, Excel files, for example, or CSV files that you might want to just pop it into the application and do your analysis or reporting or dashboarding against it, right? So I think a lot of the folks, hearing this, watching this, may have heard of Cognos BI. Cognos BI was its, name that it used to be called before, but has now started being now termed as Cognos Analytics, CA version 11. It's been a few iterations, few versions that have been come through. A lot has changed, obviously, the way how you consume that information from those Cognos BI legacy days. The stack still is critical. I think a lot of the TM1 community knows CAM security, Cognos Access Manager. It's still there. It's still giving its purpose, giving its objectives. It's still a strong tool to be used within TM1 for authentication purposes. But the way how the reporting and the dashboarding consumption, the UI, how easy it is, how native it is for perhaps an example profile would be a business user who's just looking for some analysis out of their information, out of their data. How easy it is now to just basically draw or using drag and drop kind of functionalities, use the UI and build a dashboard in near no time, right? So, which was probably could be a challenging in earlier days, in Cognos BI days, but a lot of those gaps have been bridged now, and hopefully today in some of those demo sessions you'll be able to see that in person and perhaps judge yourselves on those features.
Good call. Yes. Well, let's get on with that.
Cool. So before we kind of get into the details around what's in Cognos Analytics or what is the latest in Cognos Analytics, I think it's important to just kind of set some kind of like context around how these things are actually evolved, kind of referring to Cognos BI slightly. So I kind of enjoyed this particular slide. It kind of takes me through a journey, and because my background being back in 2006, 7 and 8 and so on and so forth with Cognos family or Cognos in Ottawa. It's kind of nostalgic to actually showcase some of these logos that you'll see on your screen. So
yes,
some of the terms might get you nostalgic as well. Power play, impromptu, back in early 1990s, Series 7, going towards ReportNet, a time frame 8.1. 8.4 in 2008, and then going into the Cognos 10 side of things around in 2010 timeframe. And that's really where things started kind of shifting, right? I think I like to call it like a bit of a paradigm shift that kind of took place around more governance focused around how to basically build reports, how to basically have your packages that are being built, publish them, have a proper cycle of building that content. I think the line of business where that ease of use to consume that information and build something really quick would started actually happening around that time frame. And you kind of actually sort of have heard of some of the other tools kind of picked up some steam around that time frame, and that's kind of has also driven the need to have that ease of use of self-serviceness around some of these tools to just start consuming that information into a tool like Cognos. And that's where around 2016 is where Cognos 11 came into place, and we now call it IBM Cognos Analytics. And as we know, a lot of those utilities and a lot of those capabilities are being consumed. So
I would like to add 2 points
Yes.
before Nimeesh goes into the next slide. The first one is, I think it's interesting for some of the longtime followers of Cognos, the Cognos family. The names have changed over time, but you see, still essentially, it's been on the same product, right?
Yep.
Same product, but
Yep.
different names, which means if you have used the older version of Cognos Analytics, any of those names mentioned before, checking it out now will still be worthwhile because things have changed so much.
Yep.
That's the first important point. So don't miss out. Don't think, I've seen it before. It didn't look very nice. Hey, it looks a lot nicer now. So you're going to tell us a bit about more context of Cognos Analytics.
So just to kind of take you guys through a bit of context. So again, Cognos Analytics is an integrated solution for managed reporting and business user self-service to create those personalized dashboards and reports for the consumption of reporters or consumers that are trying to consume that information. Not only that, I think what has been embedded into Cognos Analytics is a bit more smarter self-service and some of those cognitive capabilities on the back of the natural language algorithms that are there to just quickly build those content, build those dashboards, reports, and some smart contextual search capabilities and intent-driven authoring capabilities as well, right? So a lot of these sort of, I guess, terms or names weren't really relevant back in Cognos BI days. So I think it's important to sort of emphasize that a lot has changed. A lot has changed because the business demands it, because the time has changed, and I think Cognos Analytics has adapted to that momentum shift, right?
And also, what you mean the last point is that so people can say, show me the travel expenses for 2020 February.
That's the beauty of it.
Sorry.
You can go crazy with that. But not only that, I think the emphasis around consistency on mobile devices has really, really been important. I think back in the day, Cognos Active Reports were consuming those offline reports on your mobile devices if you're flying and whatnot was a critical aspect of it. But I think being connected now is second to nature now. Like you're always connected somewhere or the other. Even in the airplanes, you have this Wi-Fi capability to be connected. So I think a lot of that fake focus on getting information on your mobile devices has been really a driving factor into Cognos Analytics as well. Some of that stuff we'll be talking about in our session today. But all of that sitting in that proven and governed and the platform that Cognos has been known for. So CAM security that we kind of talked about before is still a critical aspect of it. The stack has obviously improved, scaled, and obviously you see a lot of performance benefits into the stack, but the crux of those capabilities are still there, and that's what makes Cognos so unique about it, that you can still rely on that proven, stable platform and get around some of these additional benefits that you've seen with reporting and dashboarding on top of it.
Okay, so quick question, and that is, you mentioned governance, how Cognos Analytics help with that concept. Now, what does that mean?
Well, CAM security, right? So CAM security and the security architecture, that's what I was alluding to in a proven platform, is still a critical aspect where it's used within the TM1 community, where you authenticate TM1 and you drive that security off of Cognos platform or Cognos CAM, Cognos Access Manager security. A lot of that where you're allocating which members of those groups, maybe they're driven out of your Active Directory namespace, or perhaps nowadays you talk about other type of authentication providers like the Oktas and the any type of SAML providers that are out there. You can actually drive a lot of that sort of, I guess, governance of who should have access to what, who shouldn't have access to what. The capabilities around it has been proven out for decades now with Cognos Security. So a lot of that is still available. So you can still leverage a lot of those capabilities and continue using within the Cognos, TM1 side of things, and where you drive that model security, leveraging those aspects. But not only that, you can drive, if you're working with relational type of data sources, when you have Framework Manager or now data modules, that you can drive that security and control the security framework, leveraging some of those, proven stable platforms that Cognos has been known for.
You've unpacked, I mean, you've got a lot of information in that response to unpack, but I guess essentially you've got a bit for both business side and of course IT side as well, right? From the business side, you want people to get access to accurate data, the right level of data being available to people. That's important. From the IT side, you've talked about a lot of structures, a lot of workflow processes, and flexible structures and integration to various different technologies such as Okta, such as AD, and a plethora of other connectivity. And that's great for someone who's looking for a tool like this because it's already there. You don't need to.
By the way, I must interject, Azure. Everybody's been talking about Azure and Office 365, and you can now leverage OpenID connections with security, and you can basically drive security around in TM1 using Azure as well. So
that's right. And hopefully, by the end of this video, you also be able to distinguish the benefits of having CA versus other tools that may have other integration capabilities we just mentioned, but none of the other benefits of being tightly integrated to TM1 PA. All right. Okay. So sorry for the
no. That's okay. This is meant to be more dynamic kind of conversation, not like set in stone sort of presentation. All right. Okay. So some of the terms that I would probably be showcasing here before we deep dive into our demo, reports. Now this kind of is the good old Report Studio. If the folks out there are still kind of, hey, I have heard that name, Report Studio. So all of those Report Studio, Analysis Studio, Query Studio, these are all some terms that were, in Cognos BI days were very popular, still are, but all of those capabilities are now housed in one capability, which is called now reports. If you've got to build a report that looks like an Analysis Studio type of report or a Query Studio type of report that have quick, filters, capabilities, columns across the board, or you just want to build a list report that you would typically build with customized filters or, multiple queries that are defined, drill throughs or master detailed relationships, those sophisticated Report Studio heavy reports, all of that is done in this mode called reports mode, right? So that's key to remember.
So layman translation, if I may, that means you've got a rich capabilities to handle a lot of edge cases and complex situations. But of course, if people are not into that, they just want the basics, no problem. Easy.
I think the easiest way I define is the difference between reports and dashboards. Dashboards don't really need to explain much, but it's just simple drag and drop at a very high summary level KPIs that you want to just simply access to data, just drag and drop some visualizations, KPIs, and start building some content on a dashboard really is done in a dashboard mode. So the difference here really is if you're looking for high level information, summarized information that you want to just have access to, maybe drilling down into some details, more from a drag and drop kind of capabilities, you're looking at dashboards. If you're looking at more customized, more, specific use cases to be delivered, like things like bursting, you want to burst some reports, specific formats, customizations that need to be done, you want to look at reports. And that's where you can write query expressions, data items, do joins, do unions, intersections. So basically a lot of those sophisticated use cases, not even so sophisticated use cases, any customizations that you need to do, reports your best friend. It's the Report Studio that we can really do everything. The one caveat I must say, and it's a good caveat, is the UI is a lot less daunting. Like I personally, and from my experience, I love Report Studio. I still do. But the UI can be daunting if you haven't spent enough time running through within Report Studio. So I feel, in my opinion, the new UI for this reports mode is a lot more easier to digest, especially for someone that hasn't experienced it, hasn't used it. It's much easier to learn. It's much easier to really know where things are sort of allocated and where to find things for queries, data items, and sophistication of the reports that is needed. So it's much easier to digest.
And that's where the modernization comes in.
That's right. That's right.
So comparing to the older versions, this is
Yep.
a big benefit.
Yeah.
I couldn't help myself. So if I wanted to burst out a bubbles report,
Bubbles. I thought you were going to say pie report, pie charts.
Come on. Sorry, that was a missed opportunity on the bursting bubbles. Okay, so next.
Yeah. So just an extension on that. You're just not just tied up with reports and dashboards. Stories is another mode where it's more like a presentation format that you can just basically have access to your data sources that you've built, or some visualization, some content that you've built, or you can actually build in a more story-like format, and you can have that presented really in a live sort of access to data. So the underlying data is not static. So it's not static like PowerPoint presentations that you're doing. So you've got actual access to data where you select a certain few things, those gestures are digested in those stories, and can be a really good medium to present in your stakeholder meetings or things like that, right? So there's a specific use case that can be delivered out of this mode, stories. Data modules is the new way of doing things like where you would be able to do framework manager related things. So it's built more to be web-based modeling within Cognos Analytics, the UI itself, right? So things like where you're doing some of those specific modeling activities that you would do in Framework Manager package, have access to your source tables, run some SQLs, derive filters, write some query expressions. So all that sort of things that you would do in Framework Manager, a lot of that is now shifting towards this web-based moduling called data modules. So that's the new advancement that has been made in Cognos Analytic days. And last but not the least, you've got the exploration aspects as well, right? Which is what kind of ties up to the natural language goodies that have been embedded, the Watson goodies that have been embedded into this, where you can just rely on those sort of algorithms to basically drive some analytics back into the application, right? Or the reporting that you're trying to build on top. So that kind of covers, in my opinion, at like some buckets that a author or a consumer of Cognos Analytics might actually rely on some of these things. So hopefully all you folks have a rough understanding of the different options that you have. And I'm pretty sure some of you guys have already picked out, like, I know which is my favorite, or which was the first one that you're going to try and get your hands on. So that's really in a nutshell that I can bucket for you guys. And obviously, the next thing we will be talking about is what's the latest, right? What's the latest version that we have as of the time of recording? We've got CA 11.1.7 as the latest release. It is intended to be, it is the long-term support release version, and which has come with a ton of dashboard capabilities that I've mentioned, right? Some of them that are highlighted are the capability to build certain, dashboards as templates. And the fact that helps is certain organizations to have certain structured, I guess you can call it governed type of, dashboards to be created by their potential dashboard creators. The positioning of the logos, the themes, the organizational templates can all be embedded into a set template where a potential dashboard creator can consume that template and already get a head start in making those dashboards that they're trying to build, right? Of course, visualizations, and that's been, I think you started off saying that's almost every quarter, and frequent release cadences showcase some of those releases that have been coming on board for Cognos Analytics. What that has done is basically allowed more changes, more enhancements. A lot of them has been in visualizations as well, where you can access multiple measures, conditional formatting as well. Some of those drop zones that have been embedded. On top of that, you can actually consume some custom visualizations as well, right? So you just don't have your access to the native visualizations, the bar charts, the column charts, the pie charts. You can now have Google charts, histograms, a lot of different type of D3 JavaScript enabled charts can be built in, consumed into the application, and really, have you access to building some of that content. A lot of the other things have been embedded as well. But again, similarly to dashboards, reporting as well has seen a lot of enhancements. And again, those capabilities are only building those bridges in delivering some of those key aspects. Now, last but not the least, Cognos Analytics mobile thing, right? So this is where initially I mentioned about where a lot of that consistency around mobile consumption has been a prime focus. So Cognos Analytics being version 11, we've got a dedicated app now on iOS devices. At the time of this recording, we can say that only for cloud hosted and on-demand cloud environments for Cognos Analytics, you have this capability of consuming Cognos Analytics for mobile. What that means is basically any thresholds for your visualizations or for your dashboards that you have set. For example, if anything goes for this particular month, my sales numbers or revenue numbers goes by 10,000, send me an alert, send me a notification, right? So some of those proactive alerts and notifications have now been embedded to go down onto your mobile device, which is really good, something that was amiss for a fair few release versions, but we're seeing that sort of focus come back and have that capability into the hands of a consumer to see some of those numbers pop up, right? So,
and that's what we can show today, right?
Yeah, so to an extent, we will be showing some of that, and then you never know, down in the next version, if John allows, our host allows, we might be doing a dedicated session.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of terms, a lot of benefits about CA, what it's about, giving a little more context.
Yep.
But I think some of the key questions we still need to address because we haven't covered them yet, which is we have talked about how CA, because natively it's in the same family as Planning Analytics, TM1, there's got a lot of integration benefits. What are they?
Well, the first thing is you've heard about alternating hierarchies, right? So that's one of the biggest integrations of leveraging REST API in planning analytics and really having that exposure to consuming alternating virtual dimensions that sit in your model and really having that quick access to developing those or leveraging those virtual dimensions in the dashboards. You've also got planning analytics subsets, again, via the data source of REST API, so planning analytics as a data source. You've got access to leveraging that. So these are key fundamental integration points, in my opinion. And why I say that is because you don't have any underlying processes that you need to rely on. You don't need to have any other manual overhead to sort of expose those models or dimensions I was talking about, or planning analytics subsets. If the model has those things, if the model has those virtual dimensions and planning analytics subsets, you are expected to see right off the bat those things in the model. It's a tighter integration. You don't rely on some other process or some other dumbing down of the data or some SSRS process or some sort of SQL process that is sending data from one end to the other end so that a tool like Cognos can consume. This is the beauty of being in one universe of IBM products and where Cognos can actually connect with planning analytics and leverage some of those capabilities.
I do challenge what you've said on being in one family of the IBM universe. To me, it's just the PA universe, the TM1 universe, how it's all tightly integrated. Because I think in the context of trying to help people decide or find the right tool for their needs, of course, minimizing development time, minimizing risk. And, we talked about integration, we talked about using hierarchies, but some of those terms might not be familiar to everybody. So I guess allow me to try to paint a picture here. So, for example, if I'm a user who have TM1 because it's the best planning application system, so I've got all my things in there. I've got lots of hierarchies. I've got dynamic moving hierarchies as well. So all of the modern planning tools would expect to have. Now, after I've got all of those structures, all of those smart models built, what this tight integration means is when I do the reporting, I do not need separate processes, overheads, expertise, other people, and edit time to translate that to a different consumable reporting interface, whether it's Excel, whether it's web, whether it's the cell phone or iPad, any of that. Nothing in between. And that's the key. And now people say, well, I can do this in SQL. Sure you can. There's nothing wrong with that. Your IT can probably do that. Nothing wrong with that. The key here is now here's another option for you to do the same thing, but a lot quicker, more secure. And everything's integrated. So the integration, we talked about governance, and then of course it's data structure, security, all of those added benefits. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 + 1 + 1 here actually equals 7. I mean, in terms of the savings, the benefits of having a tightly integrated tool. And of course, that's not in context. To put into context, that is the same as what we would talk about if it's something like in PA Workspace, because it's also integrated with TM1. And of course, the likes of Applico UX, it's also integrated with TM1. So they will all also have the benefit. What we are talking about here is if you're going to use another tool, because remember at the beginning, we talked about how some people already have TM1, they're looking for a BI reporting tool. Sometimes looking at what's right in front of them is not immediately obvious. And they go out and find other apps, and that's bringing it back to, hey, you should check this out first. Okay. All right. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all good. So I think this is kind of ties up to, what's our take, right? So what do we think of this whole integration point? So I think some of those things that we've already discussed, but I just wanted to kind of summarize it for the folks still with us. What's our take? So our take is the latest release does bring in heaps of capabilities and enhancements that are worth leveraging for dashboarding, reporting purposes. But what we have also seen is stable integration between planning analytics and Cognos. And what I mean by that is some of those things that I mentioned about the virtual hierarchies and the subsets. When you're using planning analytics as a data source, the REST API, TM1 as a data source is still available. That would mean you're using the traditional API. But if you are using planning analytics as a data source, it uses REST API, thereby giving you the benefits that you can consume in dashboards like virtual hierarchies and subsets. One of the biggest advantages is the fact that you've got this one tool to basically leverage dimensional data source like planning analytics, but also non-dimensional like relational data sources in the same application. It's the same reports, same data, same dashboard, same stories, explorations, but the only difference is that you're using a different type of a data source on the same application, right? So that's the one key advantage that you have. Only the one difference that I would like to point out, and some of us might be wondering is, well, I can do some of those visualizations and things like that in Planning Analytics Workspace as well against Planning Analytics Data Source. But what's the key difference there, right? So the one key difference that, again, I should highlight is Cognos Analytics does not allow you to write back into TM1, right? Which is what Planning Analytics Workspace can do. So you can actually write back into your model. And obviously it's built to be, you've got the development capabilities as well within Planning Analytics Workspace. The difference is you can't do against any non-dimensional data sources like SQL Server or Oracle for that matter, or any other type of data sources. So here in Cognos, for read-only, you've got all of those different data sources that you can connect to. And then, of course, I mentioned about mobile app already. And last but not the least, some of those natural language capabilities that have been coming into working with the dashboards and reports. But I do want to point out that at the moment, to my particular take, we haven't seen those capabilities against planning analytics type of data sources to leverage some of those exploration capabilities. So it's only till relational at the moment. So that's my take at the time of this recording to share some of those capabilities between the two Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics.
Thanks, Dan. Now, you're killing me with anticipation. I believe you're going to show us some demo.
Yes.
Right? Let's jump into it.
Yes. So let's jump into the demo. Let me basically get into the demo right off the bat. Okay. Yes. So what you'll see here is basically the welcome screen, basically. You are seeing the welcome screen, which is kind of, I guess, if you're thinking of Cognos BI days, think of it, this is the landing page as soon as you log in, basically, right? The way how I like to, in this version, 11.1.7, like to categorize is in two aspects. One is the horizontal bar at the top, which is at the moment black, what you see on your screen, and a vertical bar on the left, which is more of your navigational bar, right? You've got on the left here team content, which is called basically your public folders, where you've got all your organizational structured folders, reports, packages, you name it, in team content. Anything that's personal, that's sitting out in my content, basically, right? So you've got basically those aspects. Anything that I've worked in recently is basically all housed in recent. Searching capabilities have advanced in these versions, obviously in Cognos Analytics. It's very intuitive as well, right? So you can type in basically, as I said, anything that I can think of, let's call it revenue, and it'll just basically go ahead and give me all the options very quickly around revenue, the string revenue, right? A lot of these things weren't possible back in the day with Cognos BI. I personally wasn't a big fan of the search capabilities there. But again, that's history. This is where we are now. A lot has changed, a lot has improved, and you can see those result sets already, right? Those objects that I told you about, those buckets that I told you about, reports, dashboards, exploration, stories, data modules, all of them are seen here at the bottom here when you click on plus, and you can look at all those objects, how to build content, right? So what I will be doing here is basically, as part of my first exercise, is actually talk about crosstab demo specifically, right? Now, this demo is a dashboard demo. I will be leveraging a visualization called crosstab, and the reason for that is the native expand collapse of hierarchies against planning analytics data source, right? So that's what my intent is as part of my demo. So what I'll do is I have an existing demonstration of a dashboard with an empty space where I can start building my crosstab, right? So what I have here, you'll notice my dashboard getting popped up. What you'll see here is a bunch of KPIs right up at the top. And basically a bar graph right on the right-hand side. And you see this white space. I've categorically left it open for white space for me as a dashboard creator to build content. And for this, I'm basically going to simply go at the vertical bar and click on edit. What that gives me is more control as a creator, as an author, and start building things. So on the left-hand side, I will basically go into AdventureWorks and look at the AdventureWorks model. What you see here is basically your TM1 model that's sitting on the Planning Analytics server, right? I've got a bunch of dimensions. I've got a bunch of, including the measure dimension. And within those dimensions, I've got those default hierarchies and obviously my members or elements that I can bring in and build content. For this exercise, as I said to you, I will be bringing in the visualization called crosstab. Simply drag and drop, and basically, I still haven't released my left click. I can see that dark blue icon, right? What that's an indication to me is if I release it, it's basically consuming the entire remaining white space. That's what I intended to do, so that's great. Now, what's happened here is on the right-hand side, it's given me this option of the fields panel. Now, fields panel, think of it as drop zones. These drop zones are simply basically areas for you to drop some subsets. If you want to just drop some subsets or hierarchies, basically your dimensions that you can drop to start building content, right? So I'm going to start with a count dimension. Actually, instead of account dimension, let me basically start off with, let's start off with period dimension. Where's the period dimension? I'll expand that period dimension. And I will basically drop the period dimension out here in columns, okay? I will now go to account, and I will drop account in rows. And in my measure, I will basically drop, either I can drop the amount dimension, amount measure dimension, or I can simply I've built a custom calc, which is basically a tuple between an actual dimension, which is a version dimension, an actual element of version dimension, and a tuple with the measure dimension amount. So instead of dropping amount in values, I'll just drop this specific calculation into values. Now, right off the bat, what I'll see is basically I've got this hierarchy of content being populated. What I did notice is my period default hierarchy is not the way how I'm anticipating, right? So instead, what I can go into my period and replace a subset instead of the period amount that I see, right? So let me just actually remove that column and simply drag months. So now I see more like a cleaner column axis, which gives me availability for my period in there, but I'm also seeing only actuals here. Similarly, I can actually go in there and actually nest right underneath the existing actual budget. So I've got basically side by side actual versus budget for the period dimension of months. Now, the easiest part here is actually exposing some of those benefits of using the cross-site visualization, and that is the native capabilities to expand and collapse some of those capabilities that you would have seen back in the day in Analysis Studio type of reports, right? What we are doing here is we're exposing that native integration between what exists in TM1 or Planning Analytics right off the bat into a tool like Dashboard, right? Without me having to do or talk about that additional overhead running any processes and things like that, right? And again, some of those KPIs or some of those capabilities can, allow you to drag and drop and conduct some of those expanding and collapsing of those hierarchies. Now, a lot has been benefited in the tool as well. So one of the other things that I thought is worth mentioning is actually going into the properties section and looking at, for example, your actual values. You can actually define certain rules to showcase in your dashboard certain KPIs. So what I mean by that is I can tell to display the actual values based on certain specific numeric values. So just let's say, for example, if anything that is basically less than, for example, a value of, let's say, 100,000, for example, is that 100,000? Yep. And I can just say enter, so you can basically start seeing some value. I could actually say, instead of green, just show me in red. And I can accordingly just go and say a KPI, logo like a smiley, dissatisfied smiley, not a smiley, but like a sad smiley. Accordingly, really quickly go in and basically add more rules if I needed to, for example, and set more KPIs that drive some of those capabilities, and right off the bat allows me to look at that information quickly, right? So this is just some of those capabilities that can be built in. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? This is where we kind of take that integration points into the next gear, which is where I wanted to actually take you guys over to the tool called Arc, which I'm sure some of you guys have already heard. So I'm going to rely on Arc to basically allow me to create a virtual dimension, right? For folks that don't understand what virtual dimension really means, is if I've got basically a dimension called product, I might have certain other variations of product, such as certain attributes, for example. I might have a color of that product. I might have a size of that product. I might even have a different type of a product. So in the olden days, in the non-REST API days, you would have typically had to deal with, if you wanted to slice your data into the cube based on color, type, multiple dimensions, right? That would have been the case. Now, with REST API, you can build virtual dimensions. So within the same product dimension, you could have a virtual hierarchy called color, type, weight, or whatever you name it, right? So keeping that in mind, you've obviously got some benefits in TM1 to leverage. But what that does is it allows me to quickly, without having to create a new dimension, or I can just create a virtual dimension and explore that into my analysis in the dashboard. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the account dimension because that's what I would like to demonstrate to you guys. So if I look at my edit dimension, let me just quickly log in. I've got certain attributes within this dimension, right? So the interesting attribute I'm looking at is the account type. Now, account type is just basically a attribute for the dimension. I would like to build a specific hierarchy, virtual hierarchy for the account dimension and start dragging and dropping within my dashboard so that I get more slice and dice information, right? So what I'll be using is this console, which basically is create hierarchy, if I can spell, by attribute. That's the function. The first argument is basically going to be the name of the dimension. The second argument is going to be the name of the attribute. There we go. Perfect. That was a test, by the way. All right. So what I will need to do is just basically click on run. Bingo. And I have my virtual dimension created. So now if I click on refresh on the left-hand side, I've got this account type popping up. So this is that integration that we're talking about, right? So hold your horses. Now we're going to go back into Cognos Analytics. All we now need to do is simply go back and click on relink. And all I'm going to be doing at this point in time is just basically going into the TM1 packages where I've saved my package. And simply, this is just me quickly telling Cognos to fetch all the information that's come through. And all I can see now, if I go to my account dimension, I can see that new dimension populated account time, which wasn't there, by the way. Trust me, it wasn't there. So what I can do is simply drag account type and nest it as a row. You can see a breakdown of assets, liabilities, revenue, expenditures, and so on and so forth, right? So again, a very native integration use case live in front of your screens. I was just keeping my fingers crossed that, things happen during the live demonstration. So all good. So just a quick way of leveraging some of those planning analytics subsets that you can leverage and hierarchies that you've just seen, right? So that's one bit of it. The other bit that we talked about is the visualizations, right? We looked at visualizations. And you can see some of those visualizations are not like the native type of look and feel, right? So it looks a lot crisper, a lot nicer. So a lot of the changes have come through, as you can see some of those visualizations that have like Mary Mecco visualization, network visualization, right? Sunburst visualization. These type of visualizations didn't exist way back in the older versions, and I'm talking about Cognos 10 and even prior to that. A lot of those enhancements have been built in, and they're really at at our fingertips, really, to start leveraging and start consuming and testing and playing with what type of visualization fits in the type of data that you're trying to present in your dashboards and reports. So that's really, I might have jumped through a fair few things, but I'm looking at Jon and throw those questions at me, Jon.
Well, I was thinking you showed so much there. If I was to narrate and unpack all the information that you just showed us, we'll be here until lunchtime. But I think let's recap and highlight some of those things. Yep. Because to people who don't or maybe didn't follow what we were showing before, essentially, well, I can't use that word because so many things happen. Well, the first thing is that native integration with TM1 is super important here, because think about a business user. I'm a finance manager. I'm a department manager. I have a task to go into my department in a monthly process to put in my numbers. I need to submit those numbers. Now, as part of my workflow, I've saved my own report, templates, and subsets. Subsets is how we control what we see in the rows and columns. Mm-hmm. I've got all that workflow within my TM1 model, within my day-to-day workflow, BAU workflow. Now, typically, when you move onto a BI platform, that's lost, right? I want to see just my products. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to build them for you, right? How long does that take? Well, I don't know, maybe a few days. Well, that's the first thing. And the other one is, can you give me those definitions again? What do you mean? But I just created, I have created them already. I haven't changed them for 3 months. What do you mean I'm going to send them to you? Well, it's a different platform. That's what we need to do. A standard procedure, which is true. But having a tight integration like this here, you don't have that issue.
Yeah.
So the subsets and the components of what Nimeesh showed when he was dragging and dropping, showing hierarchies, showing subsets, and just dragging and dropping different elements into the dashboard. Still using the right word. Dragging into this dashboard, it's easy.
Yeah.
And the key thing is I'm not losing it in my workflow. I'm just having a richer representation layer and richer drag and drop capabilities depending on what I'm trying to get at. Now, this kind of color-coded, conditional formatted, and flexible front end, now it seems too easy, and why doesn't every tool have it once you've seen it? But some people would have never seen this.
No.
Right? And I think here is, to recap our key message again, before anyone go out and look for a new product that's not within the TM1 family, sure you can, but maybe a logical step is to review what you've got first, or I can't speak for everybody, but this would seem to me a cost-effective solution if you've integrated your planning model to your BI reporting model all together to handle where the TM1 edge cases is not natively good at. This gives us so much flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah? I think the biggest thing is a lot of the folks out there may have actually still not seen some of these benefits and some of these integration points. And I think our purpose, or at least our intent here, is to showcase some of those capabilities that are out there before you get to a point of deciding which tool is the best tool out there for you. Because you might already have, as you said, John, Cognos Analytics within the portfolio of products. A lot has changed. A lot of the folks still think Cognos BI is still some of the old Cognos Report Studio reports that just does, static reporting and maybe some filtering here and there. That's not the case. It does still do that if you really want to stick to standardized enterprise reporting, but there's a lot more to it. And there's a lot more, I think, self-service capabilities that have been added where you can just simply drag and drop things that, and that might not fit all the use cases, but at least you have the option to then be able to decide accordingly as to if that is a decisive factor to drive.
Absolutely. And for the customers that we talk to already, I guess some of you who's listening to this, you may already be introduced to Cognos Analytics and the different TM1 products we've mentioned before, which is Peer Workspace and, of course, UX and native TM1 Planning Analytics. I guess there are lots of points here where you can, branch your decision tree on what product to pick. So Nimeesh highlighted a key aspect here, which is if you're looking for a read-only solution with richer capabilities, integrating more data sources, and this drag and drop with the native natural language processing, this should be a product that you at least investigate, evaluate it. And then on the other hand, if you're looking for a tool that allows you to read-write natively into TM1, fully integrate that planning reporting solution on one, without some of the features here, because this is built for this purpose, then you could get a lot of that done natively in TM1. Next step up, naturally, Applico UX is really good for that. And then, of course, for the other folks who have another set of use cases and requirements, PW is just as good. So look into those first before you start to jump somewhere else, because it costs a lot of money, and time, and pain, and effort. Yeah. I mean,
all right, okay. So just to we're getting towards our wrapping up time. Just one other thing that I wanted to talk about to just kind of address another use case around drill throughs, right? So a lot of the folks still want to drill through on a summarized level and get down deeper into a specific detail level, right? So what I've got as my next phase of demonstration is basically a dashboard that kind of demonstrates to you to drilling down from a summary level into a detailed dashboard. and within the same dashboard, going from a summary level of dashboard to a detailed report.
Oh,
right. So let's just quickly look into it. What I'll do here is I will open up a secondary dashboard. So as soon as it pops up, it's a simple dashboard, nothing super fancy, bunch of KPIs at the top. And the second row is where I'm going to be emphasizing on, right? So what I've got here is basically an option to look at, let's say, this 2.15 million value, right? I would like to actually drill down onto to understand what constitutes that particular value, right? So I have this context that has been given to just basically drill down onto, and I can simply click on the type of drill through definition that I'd like to leverage. So as you can see in my actual row and column axis, I had distribution and tablets selected. I have now got pre-filtered information on those two nodes, distribution and tablets. And that information is being presented to me that gives me another detailed level of information that I'm looking for, right?
Nice.
So that's one way of leveraging, your dashboards for drill throughs objects. The second aspect is to actually rely on drilling down from the same dashboard into a categorical report. Now, I think I had selected East region, right? So, Central region. So what I've got basically here is a way where I can simply select from this particular central region. I have basically gone down to my target report, which is basically pre-filtered on central region, right? So this is a very standard, simple report. You could have a more sophisticated report, more detailed report. But again, a use case here is at a summary level, I have the capability of drilling down into a drill through report and get more information out of my use case, right? So that's another example. All right, so I think we've addressed some tighter integration with planning analytics subsets, planning analytics virtual hierarchies. We've looked at some drill through capabilities here. I think the next bit of aspect or next bit of demonstration that we wanted to talk about is that capabilities of leveraging Cognos analytics for mobile, right? So I think we discussed about the fact that we might be able to do a demonstration dedicated for mobile, but what we'll talk about here is basically...
let me switch to video. There we go.
There we go.
All
so
right.
now you should be able to see my app, which is basically a browser, really. I'm accessing all those objects that I was looking at that, I can access the way how I was accessing dashboards, and I can go into podcast and basically just exactly the same report that you were looking at. I'm actually going to be running that report live, right? So I'm connected. And if you remember that, the dashboard that I was just looking at. So you can see natively, you can get those values, those KPIs that we were looking at, the charts that we were looking at. So you've got that capability to basically consume that information as on the mobile app. Not only that, the other next gear to this is actually a dedicated app, right? So dedicated app as in... mobile device has been released for Cognos Analytics. At the moment, it's not connected. And this is where we wanted to tease you enough so that we can, or John can actually have a dedicated, sorry for the email coming through, a dedicated demonstration. So things are moving in the right direction from a mobile consumption point of view as well. Hang tight. We might be able to do a demonstration more dedicated on this mobile app where we can set some thresholds, get notified, look at the dashboards, and really natively consume that information into a dedicated mobile app for version 11 Cognos Analytics.
Wow. You managed to say all of that without taking a deep breath. So that was a whole lot of information, and you've definitely enticed me. So, and I guess that's where you guys come in. Buttons just decided to unbutton itself, which is, hey, give us some comments, give us some feedback. If this is something you would like to see, by all means, let us know. We're happy to prepare the information and content for you. I know Nimeesh just teased me of this native mobile app. Now I really want to see it, but that's just me, right? My thought doesn't really count as much as yours. So if you're watching this episode, you like this concept, you want to explore further, let us know. We're happy to do an episode for you. Wow. First of all, guys, let me thank you and thank you for staying with us the whole time. And there was a lot more content than we originally thought we were going to discuss today.
That's what happens when you start freestyling in discussions and conversations and Q&As.
That's right. But I guess we thought about this before the episode. And, well, what's the point of doing this episode in the first place? The answer is we would like to give our experience and our thoughts to you on the particular topic. In this case, is about reaching out to another BI reporting solution if you have already got TM1 Plan Analytics. So I hope we've discussed enough for you to think about, right? For anyone, particularly in a position that's going to look for a tool, do evaluate this first, or at least contact somebody who can give you a fair evaluation of the tool, because it will save you potentially, just potentially, a lot of time, money. I mean, time and time again, I've seen customers that have unfortunately maybe picked the wrong tool. Now, this is, of course, not the customer's fault. It's because, how do you pick a tool? We weren't trained. I mean, I wasn't trained how to pick a tool when I was, working in my earlier days, or my education. They don't teach you, this is how you pick the right tool for reporting, budgeting, and forecasting, or anything like that. So hopefully this adds value. And do you have anything you want to add to our viewers? Maybe.
I think what
have you got any Cognos Analytics jokes?
What I can say is what we've seen, and I've experienced this with some of our customers here exploring these new capabilities in Cognos Analytics, is try it, test it, evaluate it, build some use cases. I think a good exercise is building some business use cases from a reporting and a dashboarding standpoint. You've got the application, you've got access to information. TM1 model sits there, planning analytics model sits there. You may need to perhaps develop a reporting cube and build some use cases on top of it. But the tool's already there. You should be able to be in a position to evaluate it, test it, go through a testing phase with your business users to see whether it fits the bill, it fits the solution that you're looking for, and then be in right in front of your eyes. You'll be in a much better position to decide whether it's a solution that you would be considering as in a production environment, right? So I think that's what our customers are doing. That's where they're finding more value. And that's where they get a chance to actually test whether it's really fitting the ease of use and what it's meant to be. So I think I just wanted to throw it out, that particular use case, for some of the users that might think that might be something that they would be willing to consider. So yeah, hopefully that gives enough food for thought. And again, as a comment, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. Your feedback is important. So that we can build on that feedback and then consider it for upcoming sessions, provided John's still willing to have me here and talk about it.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for watching. We look forward to communicating and interacting with you. Remember to comment. Okay, we'll see you next time.
Hey, guys.
Yay! How do we do the...